Mom, you're really living too large for one person. My son Mark announced, swirling a glass of my expensive Pinot Noir. I paused with a plate of roasted vegetables halfway to the table. I was 65, a widow of 5 years, living in the same four-bedroom suburban house where I had raised him. Mark and his wife Chloe had invited themselves over for Sunday dinner. As usual, I cooked, I poured the wine, and I listened. Chloe nodded in agreement, picking at her salad. Mark has a point, Arlene. This house is massive. The property taxes alone must be draining you. And I saw your photos from Sedona last month. You're definitely enjoying your retirement, but maybe it's time to cut back. Think practically. I set the plate down quietly. Cut back, I asked. Just downsize, Mark added, tearing a piece of fresh sourdough. Sell this place. Get a little condo. You'd save so much money. And honestly, it would really help us out. The kids are getting older. Sports fees are ridiculous. And Chloe's online boutique needs a cash injection. We could use some real financial support instead of watching you spend it on gardening clubs and desert spas. I looked at my son. He wore a designer sweater I had bought him for Christmas. He had driven here in a luxury SUV that I knew was out of his price range. I looked at Chloe, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the oak table. They weren't asking for my help. They were auditing my life. They felt entitled to the money my late husband and I had worked 40 years to save. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't remind them of the endless favors I already did. I simply smiled, a thin, polite line across my face. You might be right, Mark, I murmured, taking my seat. Maybe I am living a bit too large. Maybe it is time for a thorough financial review. They grinned at each other, thinking they had won. They had no idea what was coming. After they drove away, leaving my kitchen sink full of dirty dishes, I didn't bother washing them right away. Instead, I walked straight to my home office, turned on my computer, and logged into my primary bank account. Mark had told me to cut back. I decided to start immediately. I opened my monthly statement and pulled out a fresh notepad. For the last 5 years, I had been the silent safety net beneath their extravagant lifestyle. I wrote down every recurring charge that wasn't mine. Line 1, Mark's premium car insurance. He had convinced me to bundle it with mine years ago to save money, but I was the one paying the bill. Line 2, Chloe's high-end gym membership. Line 3 through 8, their cell phone family plan, the high-speed internet at their house, and 4 different streaming services. Line 9, the monthly software subscription for Chloe's failing boutique. The list kept growing. I tracked the auto pays for my grandson's private soccer coaching, their weekly meal kit delivery service, the EZ Pass toll account for both of their cars, and even the premium cloud storage they used for their family photos. I counted the items. 24. There were exactly 24 automatic payments I had been quietly covering so my son could pretend he was a successful provider. I didn't feel angry. I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. The fog of maternal obligation evaporated, leaving behind pure, cold logic. If I was living too large, it was only because I was carrying the weight of 3 adults. I clicked on the first account. Manage payment options. Delete card. Confirm. I moved down the list methodically. I canceled the auto pays. I removed my credit card from their shared accounts. I unlinked my checking account from Mark's digital wallet. It took me 45 minutes to sever the financial arteries keeping their lifestyle alive. When I finished, I closed the laptop, walked back to the kitchen, and finally washed the dishes. Tomorrow was the first of the month. The billing cycle was about to begin. I woke up early, brewed a pot of French roast, and sat on my back patio watching the sunrise. The garden looked beautiful, blooming exactly the way I wanted it to. At exactly 7:45 a.m., my phone buzzed on the patio table. It was Mark. I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. Good morning? Hey, Mom, Mark grumbled. I could hear the background noise of his favorite upscale coffee shop. Did you get a new debit card or something? My app just declined. The barista is looking at me like I'm crazy. No, I still have the same card, I replied smoothly. Well, it's not working on my end. It says the payment method was removed. Can you just read me the numbers on the back so I can re-enter it? There's a line behind me. I watched a robin land on my bird feeder. I can't do that, Mark. Silence fell over the line. What do you mean you can't? I thought about what you and Chloe said last night. I explained, my voice completely even. You were entirely right. I am living too large. The expenses are just getting out of hand. So I took your advice and did a thorough financial cleanse. I'm cutting back. Mom, it's a $6 coffee. Stop joking around. Just give me the numbers. It's not a joke, Mark. I removed my card from your wallet. You'll have to pay for your own coffee from now on. He scoffed, a nervous, dismissive sound. Are you serious? Fine. Whatever. I'll just use Chloe's card for now. We will talk about this later. You're being ridiculous. He hung up. I set the phone down and smiled. He thought this was about a $6 latte. He hadn't checked his emails yet. He didn't realize that the coffee was just the very first pebble in the avalanche I had triggered. I picked up my gardening shears. It was going to be a very productive day. By 2 p.m., the avalanche hit the valley. I was in the middle of repotting some hydrangeas when my phone started ringing frantically. This time, it was Chloe. I let it ring 3 times before swiping to answer. Hello, Chloe. Arlene. What is going on? Her voice was shrill, completely lacking the patronizing tone she had used the night before. I just tried to log into my business software and it locked me out. It says the billing failed. And Mark just called his car insurance company, emailed him a cancellation notice because the auto pay bounced. I know, I said, patting down the soil around a root ball. I canceled all the recurring payments linked to my accounts last night. All of them, she gasped. Arlene, the kids' soccer fees were due today. Our internet provider just sent a text saying our service will be suspended by midnight. You can't just do this without warning us. I did warn you, I replied gently. You both sat at my dining table and told me I needed to downsize. I realized that funding 24 of your household expenses was a massive drain on my retirement. I'm simply following your financial advice. We meant you should sell your house, not cut off our essentials, she yelled. Your essentials are your responsibility, Chloe, not mine. Fix this right now, she demanded. Mark is furious. He's leaving work early to come talk to you. You are going to put the card back on those accounts. I won't be doing that, I said. Before she could scream another demand, I ended the call. I took off my gardening gloves, walked over to the heavy iron gate that led to my driveway, and pushed it shut. I heard the satisfying click of the latch locking into place. They thought they could intimidate me into backing down. They thought I was just throwing a temporary tantrum. They were about to learn that my boundaries were no longer up for negotiation. An hour later, I heard the familiar screech of Mark's tires in my driveway. I was sitting in the living room reading a novel, completely undisturbed. The heavy oak front door swung open. They didn't knock. Mark had always kept a spare key on his keychain, treating my home like an extension of his own property. He stormed into the hallway, Chloe right behind him, her face flushed red with anger. Mom! What the hell is wrong with you? Mark shouted, marching into the living room. I just spent 40 minutes on the phone with the insurance company. They want a $600 deposit to reinstate the policy. I slowly placed a bookmark in my novel and looked up. Then I suggest you pay it. With what? Chloe snapped, crossing her arms. You know, all our money is tied up in the boutique's inventory right now. You are deliberately trying to ruin us over a simple suggestion we made. A suggestion that I sell my home so I could give you more cash. I corrected her, my voice low and steady. You came into my house, drank my wine, and insulted my lifestyle, all while I was paying for the very phone you used to browse real estate listings. Mark ran a hand through his hair, pacing the rug. Look, Mom, maybe we phrased it wrong. I'm sorry. Okay, just give me the visa. I'll go online and reinstate the accounts. We can figure out a transition plan later. He held out his hand, expecting me to simply hand over the plastic like I had done 100 times before. I looked at his outstretched hand, then up at his face. No. Mark blinked. No, I am done funding your life, I said softly. Then I held out my own hand. Now I need you to give me the spare key to my house. You lost the privilege of walking in here unannounced. Mark stared at me, his jaw tight. I'm not giving you the key, Mom. You're acting crazy. I didn't argue. I just nodded. All right. You can leave now. Mark and Chloe left, slamming the front door so hard, the framed pictures in the hallway rattled. They thought keeping the key gave them some sort of leverage, a way to maintain control over my space. They clearly didn't know how I operated. The moment their SUV backed out of the driveway, I picked up my phone and called a local locksmith. Hello, yes? I need the locks changed on a 4-bedroom house. Front door, back door, and the garage entry. Can you come today? The locksmith arrived within 45 minutes. While he worked on the doors, I went into the garage and reset the code on the keypad. Then I walked down to the basement. Over the past 3 years, Chloe had treated my basement like her personal storage unit. There were 8 large plastic bins filled with her out-of-season clothes, old boutique inventory she couldn't sell, and broken toys she refused to throw away. I dragged every single bin up the stairs, my knees aching slightly, but my resolve pushing me forward. I hauled the boxes out of the garage and stacked them neatly at the very edge of the driveway, right near the sidewalk. I threw a heavy waterproof tarp over them and secured it with a few bricks. By the time the locksmith handed me my shiny new set of keys, my house was officially mine again. No shared access. No hidden strings. I paid the man, locked the new deadbolt from the inside, and poured myself a fresh glass of iced tea. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a notification from the bank. Mark had attempted to use my old credit card number to pay his internet bill. It had been declined again. I sat by the window sipping my tea and watched the afternoon sun hit the tarp in the driveway. The physical boundaries were set. Now I just had to wait for them to hit the wall. It didn't take long. At 6 p.m., a different car pulled up. It was Chloe driving her leased sedan. She marched up the driveway, completely ignoring the tarp-covered boxes at the end of it. I watched her through the security camera app on my tablet. She walked right up to the garage keypad and aggressively punched in the old code. Beep, beep, error. She frowned, hit the clear button, and typed it again, harder this time. Error. Frustrated, she dug into her designer purse, pulled out Mark's spare key, and stomped up to the front porch. She shoved the key into the deadbolt. It wouldn't turn. She jiggled it, cursed loudly, and finally banged her fist against the heavy wood. Arlene, open the door, she yelled. I pressed the microphone button on the app. Hello, Chloe. My voice echoed through the porch speaker. She jumped, looking up at the camera. You changed the locks. Are you insane? I need to get into the basement. We have a gala tomorrow, and my formal dresses are in storage. Your boxes are at the end of the driveway, under the blue tarp, I said smoothly. I cleared out the basement today. Chloe spun around, spotting the pile. Her mouth dropped open. You put my expensive clothes on the concrete like trash. They are perfectly safe under the tarp, I replied. But I am no longer providing free storage space. Her face contorted into pure rage. You spiteful old woman! You think you hold all the cards because of your money, but don't expect to see your grandsons anytime soon. If you treat us like strangers, you're a stranger to them too. She grabbed her boxes, dragging them furiously to her trunk. I turned off the microphone. The threat about the boys stung a sharp pain in my chest, but I refused to let her use my grandchildren as a weapon. I knew exactly how to handle that. I sat in the quiet of my living room, the threat hanging in the air. My grandsons, Leo and Sam, were 15 and 16. They weren't toddlers. Chloe could simply hide away in a nursery. I pulled out my phone and opened my messages. I typed a text directly to Leo, the older one. Hi, sweetie. I know things are a little tense with your parents right now. Just wanted to let you know I love you both, and Sunday pancakes are still on if you ever want to bike over. I set the phone down, preparing myself for silence. Less than 2 minutes later, it chimed. Leo. Hey, Grandma. Yeah, Mom is freaking out about some internet bill, and Dad is super stressed. I don't really care about their drama. Sam and I will ride our bikes over on Sunday. Can you make the blueberry ones? I smiled, a genuine, warm smile. Chloe thought she controlled the gates to my family, but she'd forgotten that teenagers have their own phones and their own minds. I hadn't lost my grandsons. I had just bypassed the middleman. Suddenly my phone rang. It was Mark. Mom, he said, his voice entirely different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow exhaustion. The internet just shut off. I can't log into work. Chloe is crying in the bedroom because her boutique site is suspended. I don't know what to do. I have $40 in my checking account until Friday. I listened to his panic. A year ago, I would have rushed in, transferred $1,000, and smoothed everything over. That sounds very stressful, Mark, I said calmly. You'll have to call your provider and set up a payment plan. Mom, please, we need to talk. Can we meet? Just you and me. Neutral ground. All right, I agreed. Tomorrow at noon. The diner on 4th Street. Thank you, he breathed. I hung up feeling lighter than I had in a decade. I arrived at the diner 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and waited. Mark walked in right at noon, but he wasn't alone. Chloe was trailing behind him, her arms crossed defensively, looking pale and exhausted. They slid into the booth across from me. Mark didn't bother looking at a menu. Mom, things are really bad. Mark started leaning forward. We stayed up all night doing the math. We literally cannot cover our baseline expenses without your help. We need you to turn the auto pays back on. Just for 6 months. We'll compromise. Chloe chimed in, trying to sound reasonable. We'll even let you keep the house. We won't mention downsizing anymore. I almost laughed. They were offering me permission to keep my own home. Instead of arguing, I reached into my purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I slid it across the sticky diner table. Mark looked down at it. It was a printed spreadsheet. What is this? He muttered. That is a summary of the last 5 years, I explained quietly. That is the cost of your car insurance, your gym memberships, your software, your streaming, your tolls. Over the last 60 months, I have given you roughly $42,000. Chloe's eyes went wide. Mark stared at the final number at the bottom of the page, completely silent. I am not angry, I told them, keeping my voice perfectly level. But I am officially retired from being your safety net. You are a 40-year-old man, Mark. You make a good salary. If you can't afford your luxury car and your subscriptions, you need to downgrade. Just like you suggested I do. Chloe sneered, her mask slipping. You're really going to let your own son drown over pride? Mark turned to his wife, his face pale. Stop, Chloe, He snapped a rare flash of backbone. Just shut up. Look at the number. I stood up, leaving a $5 bill on the table for my coffee. I love you, Mark, but I'm done paying for you. 6 months passed. The silence that followed that diner meeting was rocky at first, but eventually it settled into a profound, peaceful quiet. I didn't hear the details directly from Mark, but in a town this size, news travels. Mark had to break the lease on his luxury SUV. He was driving a sensible 10-year-old sedan now. Chloe had to close her online boutique, finally admitting it was a money pit, and got a part-time job at a local real estate office. They had to cancel the premium gym memberships and learn how to cook at home. They were finally living within their means. It wasn't a tragedy. It was just reality. I never received an apology, but I didn't need one. My relationship with my grandsons actually improved. Without Chloe hovering and controlling the narrative, the boys biked over to my house almost every weekend. We ate pancakes, played cards, and actually talked. As for me, I realized that cutting 24 payments out of my monthly budget left me with a ridiculous amount of disposable income. Mark was right about one thing: I was living large. I used the extra money to hire a weekly landscaper so I didn't have to hurt my knees in the garden anymore. I joined a travel group for seniors. I even booked a 2-week cruise to the Mediterranean for the following spring. I kept the big house. Every time I walked through the spacious, quiet rooms, I felt a deep sense of ownership. No one had a spare key. No one was storing their junk in my basement. No one was quietly draining my accounts while telling me I was the one doing things wrong. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't arguing, screaming, or fighting. Sometimes the ultimate power is just logging into an account, clicking cancel, locking your front door, and watching the entitlement collapse from the outside. I poured myself a glass of Pinot Noir, sat on my back patio, and enjoyed the view.